Once again, your phone says that you're busy, and all my texts are falling to the ground. Next round. Once again, you tell the same old story.
Control Talk Now, your smart buildings video cast and podcast for the week ending February 11th, 2018. This is episode 254. We talk about all things smart buildings and smart building controls. But what would a controls podcast be without the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, Kenny Smyers, the control man from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kenny, welcome to the show. A big dog.
Yeah, baby, let's go. I'm getting all pumped up. I feel like I'm getting ready to jump on the field and kick off. Let's go. It's been another interesting week. Thanks to everybody. We're still getting really good comments and input from the 2017 Controltrends Awards. It was a thrill to see our the broadcast basically streamed live on Thursday night. Well done on that. That's a technical feat accomplished.
Well, maybe not, buddy. I appreciate that. It was tough sledding there, as you know. We had terrible audio. The band's audio was great, so you could hear the band great, but we had terrible audio in terms of actually being able to hear the speakers like Mark P. talk and us on the stage. So it was a labor of love. I mean, it was 4 or 5 or 6 hours of trying to clean that background noise out. So it was okay, but, we want to give people a flavor for the Controltrends Awards and what it's all about. And so hopefully, again, check that out if you want to. Just be wary that it's not indicative of the actual awards itself in terms of the quality, but anyway, like I said, we did live stream that Thursday night.
Well, to your point, but I think what it does, Eric, is it captures the mood. It captures a lot of the people. But more importantly, we have a summary video coming up. And we're waiting for Lad to do the final additions and cuts and make us the magic video. So we'll have another 7 minutes of magic coming out that's going to really, truly be the social, the collateral of the show. So it's going to have 300 people are going to be seen going in and out of some scene and the outside, just to get a real taste of what Chicago was like. It was gorgeous weather. It cleared up a little bit. It's just Vlad, he just caught it all. I mean, it's going to be a great product. We saw the 2-minute teaser. So in terms of the technology, I think we live in a world with you got to go with what you get. So
right.
They had some issues with their audio. They had an AV system or whatever, and they apologized, but the truth is that for an establishment of that regard, they should have more modern, up-to-date stuff.
Well, they should. But of course, next year it's in Atlanta, and boy, I tell you what, we're already talking to people like Donnie Walker from Newcomb Boyd, who was one of the Consulting Engineers of the Year award. They got a whole audio department. He's going to help us with that. And then Stephen Johnson from McKinney's, one of the top integrators, had lunch with him earlier in the week, and they're going to be on board helping. So Atlanta will pull all the stops out. So
looking forward to it.
You know what? Our motto for the 2018 Controltrends Awards is going to be sponsor early, sponsor often.
I thought it was going to have something to do with the Falcons.
No, buddy. No. But hey, listen, we got a couple of shout outs this week, man. Who you shouting out to this week, brother?
Well, like I say, it's a big week in the industry, and it seems as though the time is shooting by. For instance, we want to congratulate first Roger Woodward for 6 years at Tritium. He's the CEO of Europe Tritium. We're congratulating Amy Cervantes for 22 years at Belimo. We're congratulating Jim Bazzano, a Controltrends community member, for 5 years at the University of Pennsylvania. We have Brian Ward, 4 years at Chemtol. He's up in the New England area, top salesman. We're congratulating Mukesh Agawari, 27 years at EWA. He's a friend of ours from London, and when we were in Manchester and we experienced that tragedy, he and his colleague took care of us and got us back to our hotel. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. He's an amazing guy. We have Robert Palmer celebrating 2 years at Airtight Facility Tech. We have Stacy McCammon celebrating 19 years at Stromquist. That's it. That's an important milestone.
Yep.
Joe Chandler, 15 years at Brody Precision, and Kevin Whalen, 13 years at TriWib. As a company I'm not familiar with, but congratulations to all these industry people for their milestones and the continued success in their careers.
Well, absolutely. And I want to add on to that. Shout out to our friend Fred Gordy. I had a conversation with Fred via phone this week. Those of you probably remember Fred from Controltrends. He is one of the top cybersecurity guys on the planet now. And Fred has been working with Intelligent Buildings, our friends Rob Murchison and Tom Shercliffe. And so, Fred has just been traveling all across the planet, man. And as he told me, it's gone from theory to, actually just working with this stuff and understanding what's going on there. So Fred will be on the show again shortly with some great updates. So looking forward to that, huh?
Yeah. Well, he's a true expert, and we were in a conversation yesterday regarding cybersecurity, and what we as a operational technology centric industry, we have the equipment that turns things off and on versus IT, which is, I don't say it's static or not as important, because of course it's very important. Your medical and dental and health and bank and investment portfolios, all that's very sacred information. But what really is scary is that when somebody can hack into the network and then turn elevators, shut things down, shut boilers, or give the equipment the sense, or the fool the dashboard, saying it's all in the green, and meanwhile they've got things running on 100% and they're going to max out. And just so it's the reality is that we've made progress as an industry, but there's 99 more yards to go.
Well, it's interesting. And Fred told me a lot of stories, which I won't share too many of them, but I will say this, Kenny, because he did talk about, you mentioned healthcare records, and he said right now, in the dark web or whatever, you basically get $1 or $5 for any credit card information you get on somebody. You basically get $25 for the health records. And that's where the real damage is. And I go, that's interesting. I wonder why that's the case. He goes, well, if you got the health records, you know where people are vulnerable, but plus you know who their family is. So health records are apparently the hot commodity on the dark web now.
Well, we had that book, and I'm trying to think of Mark Goodman.
Future Crimes.
Yeah, Future Crimes. And the thing about the health records, where they're perpetually damaging, because if you get somebody's a young person's information, you create the name, and they copycat the biography and the social security number, and they basically have two people. So a child grows up 10 years later, goes into the operation, or goes to the hospital, they discover that their records, that they've already had this operation done, they've already had this done, and they've compromised the records. But the real serious craziness about it is that there'll be people that will collect this information illegally, through the dark web, and then post it. And then the people that buy it will be people that sell insurance and sell whatever, so that they're taking this knowledge, this illegally gained information, and now they're going to use it to hold it against the people. So because they've lost their privacy. So if they have a particular HIV virus, or they have this, or they have a genetic family trait that they all have cancer by the time they're 55, imagine what the impact could be there. I mean, we have no idea how brutal the illegal release of data could be to somebody in the future.
All right. So first thing, we had up our good friend Mark Peacock and the marketing machine at Link Spring's got something going on. Kenny, tell us about that webinar.
Well, yeah, they're back in in full groove. In other words, like many of the organizations that had to deal with the AHR and the preparation for that, and then the aftermath, the decompression stage. Link Spring got their gear back online, and they held a 30-minute with Link Spring, the monthly webinar hosted by Link Spring subject matter experts and special guests. Amanda Toomey, member of the training team at Link Spring, will discuss the Niagara 4 templates, and she provided, or will provide, because this is on February 21st, 2018 at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Amanda will be discussing Niagara templates and providing an overview of creating templates in Niagara 4. The templates allow the users to reuse pieces of logic in future projects without recreating links, graphics, or retagging objects. So it's a very important episode for people that are engaged in Niagara 4, because when you do these templates and you do them right, you create basically a query environment that's amazing. That's where you can really apply your analytics and really do the data mining. It's beneficial, so you can maximize your energy efficiencies, maximize your comfort, document things, and the sky's the limit. Once you know how to do this, it's really potent stuff. So good stuff from Lynx.
Well, and of course, Lynxman does a great job with these. So that's definitely worth checking out. And of course, buddy, where's anybody going to be April 15th through the 17th?
In New Orleans, huh? Yeah, big stuff coming up in the very near future. April 15th through the 17th at the Hyatt Regency in New Orleans, Niagara, 2018. We'll begin anew, and they've got some really great stuff coming up. The agenda is building, the speakers are building, the sponsorships are building. So, basically, the Niagara Summit is for best practices to demo and provide case studies and training. So there's something for everything. There's different tracks. There's going to be a business track. There's going to be in fact, they have a day early for the people that are, the programmers and the people that really get, behind the curtains with the Niagara and the developers. They have a special session, but yeah, it'll be the who's who in the integration world. We'll see many of the world's largest and most successful master systems integrators there. We'll see the systems integrators that are the true champions of all the organizations across North America that we're familiar with all the distributors. We know that because Niagara is basically for everybody. You got Distech, Honeywell, Johnson, Siemens, and a whole host of other Linkspring. And if you go on Tritium's site, you can see the OEMs. There's just an incredible number of them, Watchstop or whatever. So people are using that Niagara framework, and they're making sure that their products and their solutions are integratable to the nth degree on the Niagara network.
Well, let me tell you something, buddy. I'm just going for the parade. I want to be in the parade again. Tell them about the parade if you didn't see it last year. I mean, Niagara just pulled all the stops out, man. Tell them about that.
Well, they did. I mean, New Orleans is famous for the the incredible funeral parades. Is when I was a kid watching movies like James Bond, for instance. I'll never forget the first time I saw they're going down the main avenue, traffic stopped, and they're playing the big horns and really jazzing up, and all of a sudden James Bond, you hear the silencer. And I think we actually walked down one of the main streets. When you go from the Hyatt, they walk you through about a half mile. Then you come up into the Mercedes, the adjacent to the stadium. There's this incredible square, Champion Square, I believe it's called. And they had one of the biggest outdoor parties we ever had. And it was an amazing event. And it was beautiful.
We got it on videotape, buddy.
We sure do. And then
right in front of the Superdome and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So and I think that's what makes it all. I mean, it's a completed, portfolio of networking, of technical training, updates, business, tracks to really bring you in mind on how to leverage, some of the asset manager tools that are available. There's a big opportunity to get recurring revenue once you understand it. There's a program that you have to go through a learning process so that you can start managing all those licenses. So it's going to be time very well spent. You probably need to send 2 people there because, again, there'll be a technical track and a business track that are almost mandatory. And then there'll be a developer's, day, the day before it all starts. So
and then somebody's got to go and
smart
entertain your clients, right? Have the credit card and go out to the bars and do all the drinking and partying, right?
Well, they don't do much to New Orleans. That's all.
It's not a party
nonsense.
city at all.
It's a dry town.
Yeah.
No, there'll be nothing to do. And the biggest fear I think these guys have is on day 2, the late arrivals, because the overindulgence and the fits of enthusiasm that people are likely to have during the first night down in New Orleans.
Well, let me tell you something, man. I think we were missing in action in the French Quarter for a while, man. They had to call in a rescue squad to pull us out. So, so there you go, buddy. But that's going to be big times for sure.
I don't think there's nothing going on down. There's no spring break or anything. The place is going to be empty, barren. Of course, I'm being facetious. The place is crazy. It's and the food. Remember, I think that was where the last time I actually ate something that really disagreed with me was down there when I was trying to experiment with the local Cajun stuff. Oh, I tell you,
raw crawfish is not a good idea, Kenny.
Yeah, that's a mistake, well noted, and not likely to happen again.
Well, cool. Well, I'll tell you what, let's bring our guest on. We got him teed up and ready to go.
I'd love to, Eric. Our next guest is the one and only owner and editor of AutomatedBuildings.com, Mr. Ken St. Clair. And today we're going to talk about building brains. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Welcome to the show, Ken.
Thank you very much, Eric and Ken. Always a pleasure to be.
Well, first of all, man, got to compliment you on the new headgear, man. You are looking awesome. And not only that, you're sounding great.
Yeah, baby.
Good, thank you. I understand the complication, and I was impressed when the software said that as soon as I signed on to it, that I'm going to adjust the volume of your speech and your hearing, so you'll be in tune with everybody else. So that's pretty neat that it did that, as we're on the four corners of North America.
Really,
That's cool. Yeah, very, very cool stuff. Well, Ken, let's start off a little bit, man. AHR Control Trends Awards. Let's talk about that before we get into the issue. First of all, congratulations on your collective collaboratorium again. And now that you sort of stepped away from it a little bit, any thoughts on that and on the other meetings you participated in?
Well, I'm very pleased that Controltrends captured and corrected the event. Had removed our heckler. That was good, and it came across very well. And I don't know what's happening on your site, but I'm getting a lot of interest in it, and was really pleased that Contractor Magazine kind of did a little bit of a mashup of the article that I had in the daily AHR paper and the event, and it actually all came together. I hadn't really saw that. I gave all the pieces to Steve, and all of a sudden he said, "Well, this is an article. Just put it together like this." And so anyway, that turned out pretty well, and I think that helped us get a little bit more coverage of a great event.
Well,
It was. I thought, I think it was the most dynamic collaboratorium to date, where you had people standing at the microphone, ready to ask questions to the board there, the panel, and they represented such different aspects of the industry. You had the manufacturer come to the mic and ask a good question, then you had one of the systems integrators, then you had an engineer. So it was just a really nice mix of people, huh?
Mm-hmm. A fractional entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, no, it was great, and that's what we've been trying to achieve. Well, I'm not sure that's what I knew what we were trying to achieve, but in the spirit of a collaboratory, that's what we want. Is we want to get the industry talking, completely free of their vendors and completely free of their particular bent, I guess, or their take on the industry. We all want to kind of just get together and say, what do we do for the greater good? And I think the IT sort of attacking us and flowing over top of us is kind of bringing the family, the automated building industry family, a little closer together. And we all understand that if we're going to survive, we got to work together to basically sell our wares.
Well said, Ken.
Yeah. Well, some of the important things I think are the issues that keep unfolding. In this February edition, I thought it was kind of clever how you used not this time it wasn't a double entendre. This was truly a different meaning. So building brains, and the verb being building brains, and then buildings themselves as a noun, brains. I thought that was clever. But what was your tell us a little bit more about the editorial and what you really where you were aiming our attention.
I think the big thing is, a few years back, if you had asked us what building brains were, we would all have envisioned a sort of a one source, probably a source located in the cloud, and we would communicate all the information from the building to the cloud. But what has happened so rapidly in the last few years, it is quite different than we ever imagined, is the basically evolution of the edge devices and the intelligent edge devices. And so now the building brain becomes not quite what we thought, but it becomes more like a conductor of an orchestra who basically has to pull together all of these intelligent edge devices and make them sing. And what that points out is that we're sadly in woeful need of standards to do that, which certainly backnets and haystacks and are standards that will be interweaved in there, but we need standards. And what's happening there is we've got platforms developing. We've got Amazon platforms, we've got Google platforms, and Microsoft and others. And they're powerful enough to look like standards, but we're starting to kind of try and figure out what all that might mean. And the EdgeX piece is a sort of an open platform kind of direction that we're heading. That looks interesting as well. As usual, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I'm trying to pull together some pieces.
Well, I tell you what, speaking of that, somebody who definitely knows what we're talking about is Therese Sullivan. Looks like Therese has just joined us from buildingcontext.me. Therese, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can. Turn your video cam down just a little bit because we're getting the top of your head. There you go. All right. Welcome to the show. Control Talk Now. You're here. You're on with Ken Sinclair and the man, the myth, the legend, Kenny Smyers.
There you go. Now we're a quorum. Quorum meaning 4.
There we go. And this is, you talk about momentous occasions. I think this is the first time we've ever had 2 guests on at the same time. And who better than Ken and Therese, the dynamic duo, kind of like Batman and Therese, right?
I'm actually impressed with your new software. Actually, you're quite right. It loaded up quite easily, and especially seeing the result here too, that the video is great and the audio is amazing.
Well, good.
Well,
good
Ken, I've been holding a question back, Teresa. We just went over the editorial with Ken and some of the important things that it's leading to the building brains concept. Both the noun and the verb. But you haven't missed much. But Ken, I've got to know where you came up with that cyborg picture and make me one too. I want to see what I look like with the cyborg overlay.
I'd like to say it was, a great thing, but all it was is it's an app you load up. And again, something I learned from the kids.
I see.
Basically, it's when they're using their Snapchats and they're using their Instagrams and stuff, there's all these filters. But then in addition to that, you can download these filters for your camera.
Well,
so all you do is you just drag any one of your pictures into one of these filters and push the button, and that happens. It takes like less than a second.
I think I'm going to try that.
Hey, listen, we sort of started the conversation a little bit, but let's sort of cycle back around, Therese. Love to get your opinion, both AHR, and we'll sort of cycle through the AHR, the KMC, Genius Summit, and then also the Controltrends Award. So pick a topic and pick which one you start with, and then we'll all chime in.
Okay. Well, I think the one we all know about is AHR because Ken was there too. And I thought it was a great experience. There were definitely some themes. I like the ones Ken pulled out was that there were more younger people. The room was filled again for all of Ken's sessions, for almost everyone. I spent a lot of time in those rooms. And as you could see from my posting and my articles, I got a lot out of the sessions with Scott Cochran and Jason Hook of HEPTA. They were really delving a little bit deeper into how their world was changing due to the Internet of Things. And I thought
that's the Master Systems Integrator breakout session that Ken put together, right?
Yes. 2. And there was actually 2.
Yeah, the future one as well. Scott helped me out with the future one as well.
So what's the big takeaway? So for systems integrators out there that might not have been able to attend that, I asked Therese, you and Ken both, what's a takeaway? What's a key takeaway that maybe surprised you or that people should be aware of?
Girls first.
Girls first, a key takeaway. The key takeaway, well, I actually also put that in a tweet, is that it was almost a theme that if the master systems integrator job is turning into a software job. They used to do hardware integration, gateways, and now they're able to remotely do a lot of that programming of the control systems through APIs if you set it up right. And that was actually a theme of a big takeaway from the KMC event too, which I liked. There was different flavors of it in both those events, but that was the thing. Once you're able to integrate through APIs and through software, the cost comes down so much, especially if you can do it remotely. And that's the way the millennials like to do it. It looks like bucket work to them. That was I don't know if you talked about the it's your ship speaker and the analogies I pulled into my February article for KMC about that, but that millennials see things differently, and one of the things they see is that they don't like sitting in dark mechanicals closets on upturned plastic buckets trying to make systems work. They see no use for that, just like the ship guy said the young sailors saw no use for painting the ship every 2 months. Why don't you just get rid of the rusty bolts?
Yeah, I tell you what, Ken Smyers, for our listeners out there who might not know, give them some stable datum about the speaker in the Ship Happens guy. And then, because Therese makes up some great points, but I think our audience might need to know exactly who she's talking about. So Kenny, you tell them, because that was one of your favorite speakers too.
Well, that's easy because he was from Altoona, Pennsylvania, and the world's so small nowadays that I actually call on Altoona. I have a meeting there on Tuesday. So Michael Ashmeroff, I have trouble with his name, but he's a career naval officer, and what he did was he took, as Therese expounded in her article, the Navy's worst ship and made it the best ship, but it wasn't something that he had a playbook to go. He had to go on his own, and he just decided he was going to do something, and he was going to go overboard with his efforts. And he interviewed every single person on the ship, got them to personally committee, find out more about them socially, where their families were from, what they did, and he got them all on the same sheet of music. And he said, let's try to improve ourselves in this ship 1% every day. And through a concerted effort and through leadership, where he wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. He wasn't afraid to let the lower ranking people eat first, and then took the officers, instead of letting them go to the head of the pack, they went to the back, and every sailor on the ship ate before the officer corps did. But through the leadership by example, he reversed one of the horrible trends where he was out of 6 ships, commanders in the Navy, in the Pacific side of the naval operations. He had the worst operations and took it to the best, and then they went on to win best in the Navy when he left. So that was a great scenario for us in terms of our own personal, where we are in our own lives. And the most common word in the English language is no. So he said, make yourself think about accepting other alternatives. Change it around, look at it from other perspectives, and and have a positive attitude, and you will have progress. So,
Holy ship, that was well done.
And actually, I'm like, wow, we sat through the same thing, and he did say all those things, and there was just so much. I was taking away other things. His story about, it was a young member of the crew that said, we don't like painting the ship every 2 months, and it had been a Navy tradition. And he said, let's get rid of all the fasteners that are corrosive, not of a modern material, if you will. And he said, let's switch them out with stainless steel that when it contacts salt water, it doesn't create all these rust stains. We're repainting the ship all the time because it's always rusty. And they did that, and they didn't have to paint the ship every 2 months. They could paint it every 10 months, saving the crew a lot of tedious work. And the analogy that I was pulling out is that's how these millennials who are entering our industry feel about something that maybe if you've been in the business forever, don't care, sit in the mechanical closet and try to make things work. Like, no, we really don't have to do that. We've got modern technology, and that should be, we should be able to do this remotely from our phones. And lo and behold, with products like the KMC's new Commander, they're able to do that. So I thought that was a real takeaway, and from both the KMC Genius and from AHR. Is
Well, we do have a millennial on the interview here, so let's ask Ken Sinclair, who is a 60-something-year-old, 18-year-old. Ken, what did you sort of pick up key takeaway for master systems integrators, and does Teresa's argument hold water for a millennial like you, or do you like sitting on buckets in dark rooms?
No, I wrote the article Metamorphosizing Me. And I think that's exactly what it's all about, is that we need to get out there and touch these younger folks and find out what they're thinking and open up the dialogue. And when we do, so it was like a great confirmation of what I was talking about. And I've tied that into the IoT Day, which is coming up April 6th, 9th, one of those days. And it's sort of a challenge to the world to reach out to some of these younger folks and sit down with them and have a discussion about IoT. And I think IoT might be the rusty bolts in our industry that needs replacing and needs discussing, and we need to have that dialogue. So yeah, no, I applaud what we were doing. The other thing I will applaud that Therese did that was amazing is back to our collaboratory. She sat in on that one as well. And she pulled that quote that John Petsy said, and he did say it very well, as he explained the haystack and how important that was, and he related it to the browser. And she grabbed that and threw it into a graphic and kind of put all the speakers in a wave along the bottom, and that tweet's been very well received and has started some neat dialogue too.
and
So
it linked back to the control trends. Thank you very much, Eric and Ken, for capturing that whole session, because the point of the tweet was to do a little advertisement to pull people back to that page of Control Trends, where they can watch the whole thing, which people have. Greg Schenk, I think, tweeted back, and he's Altura. He won, of course, Altura won the Haystack Award,
Right.
at Control Trends. And Greg Schenk, I mean, it is a circle. I put that tweet out showing that quote, got people interested, and they clicked back and watched the whole thing.
Well, listen, Teresa, I want to do a quick advertisement for you because, back, you probably don't remember this, but Kenny and Ken Smyers and I remember it, Paladin, have gun will travel. So, Teresa, you kind of are a hired gun if you want to get your social media thing going, right? I mean, you've got have tweet will travel.
That's a good one.
I have been enjoying the doing it for Project Haystack.
Yeah.
I think the other tweet, which is the other thing I was trying to capsulize, I used 100 words here. In a tweet, I had it in one graphic. If you hardware integrate, the cost is the $sign on a sliding teeter-totter seesaw graphic. It costs a lot. If you integrate with APIs and you work towards that, it costs cents. You could say all my words in like one picture, one tweet. It's great. So, and I could do 100 more based on things that I picked up at AHR and at KMC.
Well, you know what they say, a tweet is worth 42 characters unless you do a graphic, then it's worth 82.
So on this new video system, if I raise my hand, can I talk to the teacher?
Yes. Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Okay,
Otto, you're on.
That works. The thing that has evolved for me, which is I'm not sure I saw coming, is it came when I first took it. I thought it was a shot. Is one of the IT folks called me a storyteller of the industry, and I thought he was saying I was telling stories about the industry, like that may not be true, but he meant it in the best of form. He meant it as you were the guy who was connecting all the pieces of this industry together, because and I think that's what's happened to everybody on the screen here, is we've all become storytellers in our own medium, whether it's video or whether it's very old websites or some new PR material or tweets or LinkedIn. We are starting to become the people who are pulling all those pieces together. And I think that's important stuff. I call it just adding English subtitles to the industry.
Nice.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And another post on a show that we have this week, AHR announced some incredible statistics of how their attendance went up. 72,000 people, 169 countries. And what's really cool about this is this, like you said, Ken, the messages we were putting out used to go out and down the netherworld, never knew where it was going or who was listening to it. And then we have the HR, we have the clavatorium, and at various times I heard all the automated buildings came up, buildingcontext.me came up, Controltrends came up, and so it is actually working that we do serve as a very important conduit and a pivot point for our industry, and people want it. So I think as we pursue young guns and getting younger people and getting the new generation past the millennials, and we try to bring favorable attention upon our industry, I really think that we've finally got to see the needle move. We finally got some feedback that indicates that there is a growing awareness of the media conduits that we present. So I just think we need to keep putting the gas pedal on, keep doing it.
Agreed.
Yep. I had another, remember in the line in The Graduate, the movie where the guy says, plastics.
Wait a minute. Are you doing your Mrs. Robinson here for us?
Yeah, well, it wasn't. Mrs. Robinson was not involved in that scene. But
Okay.
I had a moment like that where someone said, structured cabling. And I think Ken and I had another theme going, which was, and it furthers Ken Smyers' point here about us being the conduit as people from these other industries, like take structured cabling, people that these magazines that are picking up our stuff and want our, it's as if they're saying, that stuff you write, that thingamabob, buildings, we need it. We need a lot of content. Just give it to us, because, but we're in this wireless structured cabling world, and we need to understand what you guys are doing. And I think from their world, we're just that was another interesting tweet, is that from their world, we look like this content that they need from us as the media, but also the content that people using stuff like KMC Commander are creating, all the new data that's going to come in buildings because people are trying to deploy intelligent buildings. That's got to run over this cable. They see business there, and so they want to understand what we're doing as an industry. And I even have, it's been 3 different magazines now that have come to us and said, we need to understand what you're doing. So that was interesting. I don't know, Ken, what do you think about that?
I think that's good advice. We need to understand what we're doing.
Well said.
Well, Ken, you know what? Let's go back into the crux that I don't think we fully digested. And in the Buildings Brain editorial, you said about metamorphosizing me, and now one of the things you say is the challenge is, okay, so building brains will evolve rapidly as more and more intelligent devices come on their own machine learning with AI. So that's one subject, the progress of AI. The challenge will be to manage these bit brains on the edge and use that intelligence for greater good of buildings, campuses, and the city and the world. And I don't want to read the whole paragraph, but the metamorphosis. In other words, in your opinion, we have an opportunity when these rare moments we can actually redefine our personalities and identities in our industry. We can actually take this new digital opportunity and create a better, friendlier, more utilitarianism style of approach instead of everybody trying to create their own versions and whatever. So let's go back into that subject and hear your thoughts again.
Okay. Yeah, we went through all the body parts in this series of articles, and we started with the face and the voice, and basically evolved to the brain. Yeah, so we have an opportunity. Actually, the one that I'm working on right now is trying to better understand and define transparency. which is the other piece that starts to fit into this. All this stuff is so different from what we used to do in the old days, where we all was cloak and dagger, and my company against your company, and I'm not going to tell you what it is I'm doing, and I'm going to lock my data up so you can never see it. And now we're actually on the opposite end of the scale, and where everything wants to be open. And again, it's until you touch the millennials and beyond, you can't really get your mind around why you'd want to do that. And the reason you want to do it is there's a whole society evolving out there that is, they just don't believe in proprietary. They're also very concerned about the direction we're heading with selling our souls to Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and others, Watson, and so they see the savior of all of this is in independent pieces. And I actually had to Google who Zoom was to find out who they were, and I see that they're at the point that they're probably one of these big platforms at $1 billion, a pretty big company for sure. So yeah, interesting stuff. But we do have a chance to completely change how we look, how we function. And I think the better our industry can understand that and use that amazing opportunity that's been given to us, the ability to communicate like we are right now, which is totally amazing. Here we are in almost the four corners of North America, having a little chit chat, and we see each other.
That's cool. Well, the thing Eric always says is that what do you end all the shows by saying, be bold, stay in control, and stay relevant. Well, I think this is a really challenging time to do all that, because relevant is you know, it's
relevant.
Yeah. And I see like another post we talked about, and I'm just jumping all over the court here, was that SpaceX and that, you know, the Falcon Heavy, you know, just an incredible vision of what we saw, 2 booster rockets landing simultaneously on pads like it was routine, like it was like back in the car up with the camera and not hitting the bumper on the loading dock. It's just, I'm just staggered by it. But that's how fast technology leaped from the last time we saw a rocket take off and land. I mean, I know that this is I think the 30th time or something the rockets have landed. That, you know, they returned back for reuse, or if they wanted to, they could reuse them. So that, I mean, that, but to see it like advertised, to see it so commonplace, I think it expands our minds of how quickly and rapidly we must kind of adopt and change. Because if you don't make an effort to keep relevant and keep on top of the stuff, and I think that's what automated buildings is doing for us. It keeps feeding us this new lightweight food for your mind about where we're going to go in the future. That used to take 10 years is going to take 2 years, or maybe 1.5 years. So we are really on an incredible move.
I very much agree, and I think that came out at AHR Chicago. I think it was interesting that another one of your Hall of Fame, I call it the people in the industry you tried to throw dirt over, and we kind of come up from the grave, and we just won't lay down. And you know, in George Thomas, we had that same event, and of course he jumped in as a stand-in speaker for Andy McMillan at the Laboratory. And his message about, you know, like, I'm not sure who's the oldest man in the room, if it's me or him, but it's a close tie. And he's basically talking about this new technology. Hardware is setting a new standard in the industry, and he's been using these Raspberry Pis, and he basically has been twinning that with existing Open Sedona. So all of a sudden he's got a formidable controller at a relatively low cost. And behind the scenes in his booth talking to Zach, we started talking about some of the other things, how easy it would be to add voice to that device, and how easy it would be to use the Microsoft learning library that is now downloadable into the Raspberry. So that was kind of neat stuff. And while I was doing that, I was showing Zach on my phone the library because he hadn't seen that. We were talking about it, and he asked the question. He said, "Can I take a picture of your phone?" And I was almost froze. It was like, "Yeah, I guess so." And in that moment, it kind of just captured a whole shift in thinking and stuff. For him, he didn't want to stop the conversation. He wanted to capture that little thing that I had showed him, and he could do it in a minute or second and continue on. It's just like, you've given me this piece of information. I'll just record it. It's there. And it's just a whole different way of thinking that we need to understand to help us metamorphosize.
Right. So another thing that happened at AHR was the announcement of a kind of a white paper that I was one of the co-authors on, and it is really an initiative started by, you can find it at newdeal.blog, but Jim Lee of Symmetrics and Anto Bugiar
That's okay.
have been nurturing this conversation. And my article, the second one, is actually quite a synopsis of what their New Deal means. And it breaks down into 3 tenets, one of them being open standards like BACnet, Haystack, etc. The second one, digital twin, which is a subject unto itself, but that ability to have a digital version of your, through modeling, software modeling of your building, and be able to model and simulate at different levels of abstraction is becoming super important. And the third and most important is, once you have these things in place and you've connected up your building, there's going to be a great opportunity for managed services. And I think that came out in the KMC Genius Summit too, by Rick Lisa of Intel, who said, in this connecting up the building, they see like 5% of what will be sold, what will be the value of this new way of running buildings. 95% will be managed services of, oh, we've got all this data, what are we going to do with it? So that's what the New Deal is about. And the paper is on the CABA website, and my little synopsis, you can read it, Automated Buildings.
Okay, Ken.
We have an article by Jim Lee on our February issue. And the one thing Therese missed was the service transparency,
right,
which I think is an interesting piece as well. That's another one of the pieces of the New Deal.
What is that, Ken? What is that transparency? Tell us a little bit more in depth about what that means.
It's, in basic terms, it's just letting everybody know what it is you're doing. The Uber is a great example of it. Oops, sorry, the lift for Therese. But the whole idea that you can actually see the what's happening in your ride coming to pick you up. It's the same thing in our industry. We need to expose the data, expose the comfort. Once we are able to measure the comfort in the building, we've got to expose that. You got to make that available. You can't hold the cards to your chest like we used to. That's what it
is extraordinary, because I mean, now with Uber, you guys got me onto Uber. I never took it until I came out and visited with you out in California and Realcomm. I become, now I'm an Uber fan, and but it is amazing. You hit the thing and it just shows you the satellites come in. You pick your ride, and you see it intersecting with your actual physical presence. You know, it tells you to move a little bit to the right, or can you correct your pickup location? I mean, and the chats that go on. I mean, and to have a phone call ability immediately there, and to have the ratings of the driver all on the same screen. It's just, you have to learn how to sort out and filter the information, because it's all there now. So if we did that with buildings, we'd have to.
That's transparency.
Okay, I like that.
What is transparency? I hate Uber, though. I tell you what, it's such a pain in the ass, man. Let me hail a cab. I just wish they would drive. The cab prices would come down. So I hate having to wait and deal with all that technology, because, 9 times out of 10, you get a call from somebody, you can't understand them, they can't understand you. It's such a hassle. for me. But
Hey,
then,
Eric, you soundly just sat down on the bucket.
yeah, I sat down on the bucket, baby. Give me the bucket. Now I'll tell you. Well, and the other thing too, I want to get sort of back to it, because at the end of the day, I think vis-a-vis smart buildings and talking about buildings, because at the end of the day, if you think about it, guys, real estate people are in business to make money, right? And I think one of the interesting things here is that having a smarter building or a well building, and Mark Peacock in your last
A
edition,
laboratory.
Ken, of automatedbuildings.com, check it out, said that, most employers between 65 and 85% of their cost are for employees. So by having a well building, or a building that people are healthier and more productive, you can market that. It's because I think at the end of the day, as a real estate person, you're competing against the guy down the street, right? So I'd like to get your guys' opinions on, not only is, smart building save money, but it's smart business. Agree or disagree?
Oh, totally agree. And I'm glad you brought up that part by Mark Peacock that went on in that conversation. Because it's been a lot in the news, is Harvard's COG FX study, which really gave some data and metrics to how productivity is improved by these green building standards, by not only better heating, lighting, ventilation, but volatile organic chemicals, really monitoring indoor air quality through these Internet of Things enabled type systems. They really will return value in productivity. And this big Harvard study that's been running for years, they just let out another white paper or whatever, and Mark was referencing that. So I think it's proven now. We
Well,
use
to your point, and Ken mentioned it, the standards, it's amazing with industries and how it's important for industries to self-regulate themselves, because if the government's kind of get in there and try to do it, it's a bureaucratic nightmare, and everybody resists it. But if the industry can self-regulate itself from within, and those standards become apparent, and not the standards that people think maybe like the Google or the the Samsung or the iOS standards, but this thing with Harvard to me is that buildings, just like we're doing metrics with 330, 300, and 110 and 1,000, or however you want to define, there's a cost to build the building and maintain it. There's a cost to provide energy to it. And there's a cost of people inside there. And the greatest opportunities to increase the productivity and well-being of the people inside the building. Well, imagine like in a couple of years when you're going to go and look at any kind of a building that you're going to lease, and they're going to have a metric on there that's going to be like 8 out of 9 or
Yeah.
7 out of 9, or we meet the requirements of 5 out of 9 of this Harvard metric thing about the health of the building. We got the best lights we can provide. We have a constant monitoring of the indoor air quality, and the volatiles are down. We monitor everything, and so if you're picking out a building and you get ready to spend the same amount of money, are you going to go to a building that has 8 out of 9 of these metrics met versus 4 out of 9? I mean, it's going to really and truly drive a lot of people to get smart.
Right.
Well,
And to Eric's point too, the idea that we always talk about the stakeholders, the building owner, the facilities guy. We've got all these stakeholders. The new word is there really is only one in this era of WeWork and space as a service. There's really only one stakeholder, and that's the occupant. Because if they're not happy, if they're not getting 9 out of 10, or they'll just walk, because they can. And even the corporations are saying, well, you can work out here in our cubicles, or you can have this WeWork space. And the millennials are saying, well, we'll take the WeWork space.
No, absolutely. Well, it makes so much sense. You get the flexibility, but again, what's amazing me, guys, and Ken Sinclair, again, coming from Johnson Controls and being in the business, is I still go to meetings. Kenny Smyers, you probably do too, where they're talking about, well, we have this many binary ends versus this many outs. They're talking about the technology, and they're not talking about the marketing side of it. So I keep wondering when somebody, one of these big, marketing machines at a Johnson Controls or Honeywell, or well, I think Acuity is already on it. I mean, I think Acuity has picked up on this, but when we're going to start having, that's going to filter down to the sales level where you're going into a meeting And one of the participants is that real estate developer's marketing team, because they're talking about how they're going to use it to increase how much they can charge per square foot and increase their occupancy rates.
Right. That was another great speaker. Is we had the Distech guy in the collaboratory who talked to that.
Trevor Palmer.
Trevor Palmer, yeah. Actually, that's okay. I got a whole bunch of things I want to go, but the first one, since I was wondering how I was going to get back to the collaboratory, so thanks for that, Therese. Back to the collaboratory, we've got 2 articles on the February issue that are, if best the way to probably describe them, are spillover from the collaboratory, because I limited them to 5 minutes. Both Mark Petok and Troy Davis wrote articles to get their next 5 minutes in, and they're both well worth a read. Actually, I love Troy's because Troy said, this is what I was going to say in my 5 minutes, but I got caught up in the moment and I talked about something completely different, which is exactly what a collaboratory is all about. So I took that as a great success. Back to the people. The people are important. The people are the only thing that's important in buildings. We discovered that a long time ago in the fact that in the projects we were working in DDC in the Pacific Northwest here, we used to work, and we changed the name from Energy Management Control Systems to Client Comfort Systems to basically to show that like what they said is energy management had a negative connotation, and it's really all about client comfort. That's the business we're in. So anyway, we changed the name of that, and that evolved to the concept of the Make Me Happy button. Is in fact all the people ever wanted was just a button on the wall, and you just push it and it makes you happy, whatever that might mean. And I think the Make Me Happy button has evolved to a comfy app, and now is starting to evolve into platforms of artificial intelligence and self-learning that are going to follow you. And I think if you read Mark's article, What is in Store for This Year, he calls it 2018 is the year of platforms. And I think he's heading in that direction as well. So some pretty interesting stuff coming down there for sure.
Yep. And I'm tying up in a loose end that I started before about the wireless and the cabling companies seeming to take such an interest, is that Make Me Happy. One of the bar charts I saw this week is, yes, if you had a bar chart that said my connectivity in my building, like they can't get a cell phone signal, that makes them very unhappy, all the tenants, that they can't deliver that. Like the bar for that was like way over on the horizontal side, like let's call it 90%. The Make Me Happy, I'm hot, I'm cold is like 40%. I think the acute pain, if you're looking for that pain when you deal with the real estate people, it's that connectivity piece. And that's why I think these other magazines are coming to us, because they want to fill in that other 40%. If they want to sell the new cabling for the building, they're gonna address the connectivity, and yeah, they'll bring along this comfort stuff too.
Actually, that's a real good one. The one I love is the younger generation can do without heat, electricity, as long as they have their batteries and as long as they have their connectivity.
Exactly.
You can find them sitting on a curb with their hood over their head, as long as they've got their connectivity and their wireless and they're connected to their world. They're happy. Aren't you cold? No.
And that's why I feel like someone whispered in my ear, like in The Graduate, plastics, and said, why are we talking about this stuff? It's cabling.
Yeah.
But I think that's the acute pain right now.
Well, great. We are talking, our guests this week are Ken Sinclair from automatedbuildings.com. The February issue is out and worth checking out. And Therese Sullivan, buildingcontext.me. Have Twitter account, will travel. So there you go. So, all right, guys. Well, what else we got to talk about? I mean, we could go on for hours and hours and hours, but why don't we wrap it down? Any key points? Ken Sinclair, why don't we start with you?
I got to go on a mountain bike ride soon.
Right.
So
there we go. All right. So Ken Sinclair will be on a mountain bike ride. Are you going to wear the headgear on the bike?
No. no,
Oh, okay. All right.
no.
All right.
Oh, my helmet. Yes.
Well, listen, why don't we sort of wrap it up? I'd like to get your guys' take on the Control Trends Awards. Both of you were there and helping us out. So kind of as a sort of a last sort of deal, what was your take on this year's Control Trends Awards, Ken?
Me, Ken, no,
Sound,
Ken. Okay.
sound for me anyway, and I think it was for everybody too. Is you got Delta, a bad sound card, and
Right.
it amplified in the fact that we couldn't hear you in the audience, so the audience started talking because they kind of lost the thread. Everybody was asking, who won that? Who got that? We actually had to grab Gina Elliott and because she couldn't hear that she had actually won the when you wanted her up on stage. So that was a kind of.
Look, that also happened with Brian Klein with the Young Guns. And we had to apologize on that too. He'd never heard his name called. So when you were doing that picture and you had his name in there, but he wasn't in the photo, that was another victim of. He was in a no sound zone.
Yeah, who would have thunk at a rock and roll club they couldn't get the audio right? Now the audio on the band was fantastic. I thought the band was great, but you're absolutely right. That was to me probably the only real damper was they did not have the MC audio.
Well, the other problem was the diversity between the music and yours. So what happened is the music came in real strong, like you said, and then the music stopped. And then we couldn't hear you. And I think the problem is
there's a reason for it. I'm not going to go into it too much, but they just basically had two sets of speakers, and one was for the band's audio, and one was for the rest of the show's audio. And then they didn't have them both on at the same time. So actually had two sets of speakers, and in locations where for the band it sounded great because they were an older, more distributed speaker systems, and the new one was tied to the DJ and the audio of the stage, which was along the interior wall of the place. So we learned. I'll tell you what, it's not like we got a break on the price or we got any kind of discount. All we got was a sorry, we'll do better next time or something.
Yeah.
But
okay, the other thing I want to point out though is that I started with the negative side of it. The incredible positive side of it is you've created an industry party that is cherished by all, and I think you don't have to scold the disruption that was in the crowd. I think you have to applaud it, because if you actually looked what was going on, you had people who never talked to people 5 years ago, sitting at the same table, slapping each other on the back and having just a great time and jeering the person who had won. And there was just, it really looked like a family wedding. And wow.
Nice.
well, you know, Ken,
That's so good, Ken. I'm glad that you put it that way, because you have to turn it inside out. Is that people like Gina Elliott, I can just speak from the women's point of view. We just loved Renee Joseph's of JCI's little speech, and Gina Elliott was very happy and to get the award, but at the same time, it wasn't about the award. It was about us being together, being able to talk to each other, meeting the picture I was in, the Johnson Controls and the Schneider Electric, and other female executives being able to be in the same room and hug and laugh, and it was so much fun.
Well, you know, if you think about it, you know, Kenny and I created this because every other industry has some form of celebration, be it the Grammys for music or the Emmys or the Oscars or the Academy Awards. So it's kind of our night. So it's good to hear that, because Ken Sinclair, I think you're correct. I think 4 or 5 years ago, you wouldn't have gotten those people in the same room, and much less having a good time. And that's it. I mean, I think, we firmly believe we got the greatest people in the world in our industry, and for them to get together and have this night to celebrate each other is a good thing. And I can promise you, Atlanta, where it's going to be next year, we're pulling all the stops out. So Kenny's talking to Mick Jagger and Paul McCartney, and they're talking about we get the Beatles, Stones reunion.
They're bidding on it. See, we're going to go with the highest bid. No, to your point, Ken, the videos, when you see the videos, they're very charming, but we had a 2-minute teaser. And if you look at it, it does look like a wedding. It looks like, because when the one table had reason to celebrate, the other ones weren't booing this time. No, just kidding. The comment I always think about is, Eric, about leave your sabers and your swords at the door. Come on and have a good time. You can pick them in back up when you leave, but when you come in here, and that really makes the efforts that we put into this all the more valuable, is because we see progression. We see our industry getting a chance to make noise about itself. I mean, that the Hall of Fame thing too I'm telling you, it's growing, and the reason why is that we discovered that the HVAC was one of the only industries that did not have a Hall of Fame. I mean, everybody, baseball to card collecting has a Hall of Fame. I was reading about the #1 baseball card of all time, was with Honus Wagner, where Pittsburgh spelled wrong, doesn't have the H on it, is worth $2.5 million, but it set the whole card industry in place, and it's it's the prime piece, the cornerstone of an industry, collecting cards. But
hang on, Kenny, real quick before you go on, because I just want to announce to our Control Trends audience right now, Hall of Fame winner Ken Sinclair. We have a limited edition Ken Sinclair Hall of Fame card. We're selling 100 of them at $100 a piece. Keep in mind, that could be worth some money later on, right?
There you go.
Get your Ken Sinclair card.
Okay, well, back to the Control Trends Awards, though, but let's put it in simple terms. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to put together the Industry Academy Awards and a family wedding. Do you see the problem?
Yes.
Seriously, do you see the problem?
Yeah.
So you can either have a great wedding or you can have a great award. I think your chances of getting these people to be quiet and respectful enough to go to the Academy Awards is slim.
There's a reason we sit on buckets in dark rooms, right, Ken?
That's a good point. We don't get out much. And when we get out much, we want to enjoy ourselves.
Absolutely.
Well, Eric did a good job of editing. The thing was so frustrating that we had, especially when the actual awards and the winners were being announced. But when you see the videos and you see how the people were actually interloculating like that across the tables and at the bar, and it was like a party, like you said about the wedding. And for us, that was most important. I mean, we have profound respect for people that win, but the whole idea was to make it a social event of the season, the one of a kind thing, something that people you look to annually for the next year too. Because like Eric said, we learn each time. And one of the things we won't have a problem with is with the audio. So we won't have to have that thing to deal with, that negative consequence.
Right. Well, so listen, guys, I think we're gonna have to hop off here, but I want to thank you guys both very much for your continued support, not only of Control Trends, but the Control Trends Awards. And thank you again for the marvelous work you guys do. AutomatedBuildings.com. Check it out. It's the place Kenny and I go to get informed. Hey, if we want to know what's going on in the rest of the world and get some great opinions, we go to Therese Sullivan. And again, if you need some marketing done, Therese has Twitter handle, Will Travel.
Totally.
There you go. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And well, great stuff from Ken Sinclair and Therese Sullivan, huh, Kenny?
Yeah, well, I tell you, it's a great tandem, and it's great insight, and can't get enough of it. So the biggest promise they need to make each time is that they reschedule for. We have another return visit from those two folks next month. So so it's a recurring thing. It's basically a brain dump. I think we get a chance to see how what's happening and why it's important.
Right, absolutely, for sure. Well, speaking of stuff happening, our good friend. Wish he was our good friend. Actually, we just wish we were in his will or on his payroll. Elon Musk was up to some stuff this week. Well, tell us about that, Kenny. You posted a really cool video on Control Trends.
Well, Eric, this of course had indirectly a lot to do with everything we do. But the one of the most momentous things I witnessed as a kid, I remember the Beatles on Ned Sullivan's show. I remember different things, but when we watched the space launch and we watched the moon landing, and we saw the things, that were just really difficult to grasp, and then how important it was to get the first, vehicle on the moon, land and come back was one of the biggest, most incredible technological, feats of all time of mankind. And I think the first one, it was China was able to feed its population by itself. That was the greatest technical feat. But the the amazing thing about this is if you watch the videos, these two booster rockets land simultaneously like it's magic. And what Elon Musk says in those interviews that follow, which we have 3 video posts, and I would watch all 3 of them in succession. Watch the 33-minute take off, and it's because it's the old stuff. It's an incredible thing, taking this monstrous space vehicle, getting it off the ground using the first stage, second stage, and then it releases. But they recovered the first stage boosters. Now, see what this means now is that the reality is that you can reuse space vehicles. They can take off, go to from point A to point B, land at point B safely, be refueled, reused, retooled, refitted, and then take back off and return to point A. That was never feasible. Nobody, I mean, it was.
Kenny, I think you're right on it with, but what my understanding of Elon Musk and this whole SpaceX thing was, they, like you said, they just never apparently tried to reuse this stuff. And I think his whole premise was, why are we wasting all these billions of dollars
Right.
to reuse this stuff? So I think he's repurposed this stuff, right?
It sure is. So I mean, it's a historic thing, and it's another case where the private sector can outperform a government sector in getting something done. If you let the free market thing, and you let all the brilliant people in the world get together with their money, and they'll be very judicious with it, because I mean, obviously there's a shortage of money when it comes to this kind of stuff, because you're talking billions, not millions anymore. And then, so what's the extraordinary implications of the reusable, refuelable rocket ships make continuous space travel from one point to another and back, as well as the exploration and habitation of Mars. And he says it right there. It's very like now. They're no longer the fare of science fiction and H.G. Wells. But and like you said, the different series. So they lost the second stage booster rocket. Actually missed the target. It was floating. It had an X out there on an autonomous barge, basically, and this thing was supposed to land on it. And it apparently crashed in about 300 meters away. And the intricacies were the fuels have like the 3 types of fuels have like a quarter of a second to ignite in succession. And the one ignited and the other fuels apparently didn't ignite in time to rescue the vehicle. So what happens is it throws this tremendous thrust out there, and then the honing devices bring it in on the target, but it didn't have the capability of landing where it was supposed to. But the cool thing about it was that he was saying, Elon, if you watch the videos, that it wasn't such a bad thing because they have different series, and this was like the fifth. This was one of the series that was being phased out. It was not one of the ones that they were going to reuse anyhow. So to them, that was they didn't want that to happen. Of course, it would have been an incredible feat if all 3 of them would have come back to home base safely. But they're still learning, and that's what he says. That this, and then of course he had fun. He put one of his original red roasts in the driver's seat of the space vehicle, of the Falcon X that's going to go on for 1 billion years. This thing was launching a trajectory. It's going to go around the sun, and it's going to intersect with different, it's going to go on an exploration. It's going to provide us incredible amounts of knowledge, and it's loaded with incredible things. But one of them was they wanted to put some thrust or they wanted to have weight in there, and they were looking for different things, and they thought, what would be better than one of these cars? And there's all kinds of information that they put on there. It's like one of the Star Trek movies where, 1 million years from now, they come across our space vehicle, open it up and say, what were these Earthlings, these eggheads up to, and they see where we were with our technology. So it's like, again, it's like science fiction, but now it's not. Now we will see probably more people's attention driven to this and support it, because not only for satellite launches, but for wealthy people that want to do something with their money. Imagine they could take a month stay to Mars, fly to Mars, hang out there for a while.
Well, it also might be the secret to immortality, because apparently, something happens with time. So if you go up in space for like a year, I mean, it's like you only go like 3 or 4 days, right? So
it slows down. Yeah.
It slows down your aging process. So I'm looking at it from that aspect. I want to go on a sort of beauty regime to Mars, right? So put me on that. I'm gonna sign on for that, big dog, for sure.
Well, or else they probably have a whole different set of laws, so you can clone yourself and then take over when you're 24 again, or 25. Get the Eric 25 and the Eric 30 going.
Dude,
send them back.
You speaking of that, I just started this series on Netflix last night called Altered Carbon. and it basically, they're able to freeze people, and you have a stack here. So they download your consciousness and all, and then they, you get it, so instead of, like, if you go to prison, right, they just basically sleep you for 200 years or whatever your sentence is, and then you get another body and they drop your stack back in. So long story short, it's a murder mystery. I just got into it. But they're bringing this guy back from like 300 years ago to solve a crime. But
Is that cool?
I think we're heading that way. I think it's just
well, and then the artificial intelligence, so that we know now that the autonomous rockets and the artificial intelligence can do all the navigating or whatever. So just to preserve it, to me, the incredible evolution of humankind had dictated that we must escape the bounds of Earth, because we've had some interesting things happen where a meteorite has passed within 90,000 miles of the Earth, and if that would have hit, it could have been an Earth ending event. So you have all these probably these think tanks and all these organizations that don't appear on day-to-day TV, that are charged with the responsibility of maintaining the continuity of human life out in space. They've got space stations. I'm sure that there's a very interesting story that'll start to become more disseminated now that these realities are breaking. This breaks. Right. This is like watching Jurassic Park in the movies or something. This breaks the boundaries of what we used to have as the ceilings of our understanding. So this is going to keep challenging the way we accept new technology, and the way we accept it is more commonplace. So and we've lived in this life, like I say, 1969, we saw all the incredible things. 1968 was an incredible year, as far as the civil rights and the social movements. When Kennedy got shot on TV, and we weren't watching TV. I was watching the Three Stooges or something, and all of a sudden it broke. What the heck? I started. It was 3 channels, 2, 4, and 11. And it was like all the same thing. I'm like, oh, rats, man, because I was too young to understand that this was a momentous occasion. Well, we just had one of those momentous occasions presented to us this week, so it's kind of cool.
No, you just got me thinking about, because I'm thinking about millennials and new people. They never got to experience the Three Stooges. I think that is the great equalizer. I mean, if you really want to understand the baby boomers, if you're a younger person, just watch the Three Stooges. That says it all about how we were raised.
We had some good ones too. Remember, we had Star Trek, and we had the Big Valley, Heath Barkley and the boys,
Linda Evans. And,
oh yeah.
And, those are some great shows.
Now we better press on here before they start changing the channel on us, Eric.
That's right, brother. That's right. Well, listen, the next post we had up was a live stream of the Controltrends Awards event, which we talked about earlier. And Kenny, we had a couple more posts. Let's wrap it up and take it home. Right.
Well, basically, the good stuff where we have training coming up. We've got CABA with an Intelligent Buildings Council webinar Thursday, February 13th, 12 noon through 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the register button for you there. And then we have the AHR, record-breaking 2018 AHR Expo. And that was really impressive. I mean, you think that you've seen it all. We had the gigantic attendance in Las Vegas. I think it was 61,000. Well, guess what? In 2018, an unparalleled success, setting 6 all-time high records, including 72,000 people in total attendance and 49,995 registered visitors. Wow. They had the most, just some of the stats were incredible. So the total attendance, including exhibitor personnel, is 72,000, up from 68,000. Total visitors in attendance, 49,995 versus 48. Exhibiting companies, 2,155 exhibited versus 2,118. Exhibit space, 543,000 square feet versus 500,000 square feet. And what's really cool is 169 countries were represented at the HR 2018 show versus 165 in 2017. And of course, we knew that it was just loaded with all kinds of good things to do, like the education sessions that we were so fortunate to take part in with Ken St. Clair and some of the other things we visited. So it was just an enormously rewarding experience.
Okay, well, that's it. That's another week of Control Talk Now, your smart buildings videocast and podcast. A special thanks to our guests this week, the one and only Ken Sinclair and Therese Sullivan. So with that, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back next week. Until then, be bold, stay in control, stay relevant.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Smyers.